Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Meet the Candidate press briefing with Dr. Patricia Campos-Medina. My name is Cassandra Etienne, Associate Director at the Center for Cooperative Media. The center works to grow and strengthen New Jersey's local news ecosystem, and we partner with some 150 ethnic and community media outlets. And press briefings like this one here today reflect the center's effort to support ethnic and community media in a number of ways, including facilitating access to newsmakers and government officials who can talk about issues that are timely and of importance to New Jerseyans. As part of the 2024 election initiatives with NJ Spotlight News and our ongoing Not Your Same Old Sources series, the center is hosting a three-part series of virtual press conferences with New Jersey senatorial candidates, Dr. Patricia Campos-Medina, Lawrence Larry Ham, and Representative Andy Kim. Each of these candidates is vying to replace Senator Bob Menendez in the upcoming election and represent the more than 9 million New Jerseyans who call our state home. These briefings will offer a chance to learn more about their diverse backgrounds and contrasting views on policy and economic issues. Thanks again to Dr. Patricia Campos-Medina and to all of you in attendance today. Before we dive in, I'll just share a few quick reminders. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared back with everyone who is in attendance. This press briefing allows for about 45 minutes of Q&A following remarks from Dr. Campos-Medina. We encourage you to drop your questions in the chat and we'll do our very best to answer all of them during our time together today. And now I'll turn it over to our host, Anthony Oni Advikula.
Thank you, Cassandra. My name is Oni Advikula. I'm the coordinator of ethnic media initiatives at the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State, and I am your moderator today. There are nearly 2 million Latinos in New Jersey, but Latinos only account for 8% of the state legislature. And women make up about 51% of the state's population, but just 34% of the new legislature. Nationally, there were 62.5 million Latinos in the United States in 2021, accounting for approximately 20% of the total US population. But there are only 6 Latino senators in the entire country. These numbers matter in the senatorial race in New Jersey. And our speaker today will certainly touch on issues related to race, workers' rights, and immigration policy, to name a few. An immigrant herself and the daughter of immigrant parents of Cuban, Puerto Rican, and Salvadoran descent, Dr. Patricia Campos-Medina is a fighter for workers' rights. She has a record of developing strategies for union organizing, electoral and worker justice community campaigns. Currently, she is the executive director of the Workers Institute at the Institute of Labor Relations at Cornell University, and she's the president of Latina Civic, an organization advancing economic and equity policies and supports Latinas to run for office. Let's welcome the New Jersey senatorial candidate, Dr. Patricia Campos-Medina.
Thank you, Oni, for that introduction, and thank you everyone here for joining this press briefing. It's indeed an honor for me to be here and actually call myself a candidate for the United States Senate. When I first considered entering this race, many people told me, why would you go against the most powerful governor and his wife in this election? Why would you go against a long-term politician who has the ability to raise money already? Why should a woman of your background enter the race? And the question for me was always one that I know from my heart, that at this moment of economic instability, at this moment in which our democracy is being torn apart because American workers feel economic insecurity and they don't see the ability of the next generation to be able to accomplish the American dream. In this moment, a woman with a history of being a labor champion, a labor advocate, and advocating for working families and working class women, needed to actually enter the race and drive a discussion on the issues that matter to working families. It also needed a woman of color, and it needed a Latina to actually drive the discussion on the needed discussion on representation, gender, and race in New Jersey politics. So my entering this race is because it's timely. Workers need a working champion. They don't need to hear that the politicians that represent New Jersey are going to be willing to negotiate with MAGA Republicans, and that's what we need the message to be. What New Jersey working families need is somebody who's ready to take on corporate America and fight for better jobs, fight for better wages, fight for investment in childcare, investment in after-school care, investment in our schools, investment in home care so that we can get women back to work. We also need a woman to fight for reproductive justice, for our reproductive freedoms. In this moment in which women's reproductive rights are being taken away by a Supreme Court that is an activist court, we need someone who's ready to stand and calling out ending the filibuster, for changing the court, by expanding the court, and by putting ethics limits on the court, to making sure that our Supreme Court justices are not wine and dine by billionaires and at the same time turn around and take women's rights away. What we need is, in the words of Bernie Sanders, and I was a co-chair for Bernie Sanders in New Jersey, we need people who are willing to fight for working people and tell American workers that we are here to fight for the right of workers to have a union by pushing for the PRO Act, an federal increase in the minimum wage, by passing the Raise the Wage Act, by reforming the Supreme Court so women can have the reproductive freedoms back, and by organizing and energizing the Democratic coalition of Black, Latino, working class voters. Democrats have been losing working class voters to Donald Trump because we had not given them a solution to their economic plight. And with 30 years of advocating for workers, fighting for unions, looking for solutions at the state level for workers in the gig economy, I have the experience and I have the knowledge to find data-driven policy solutions and bring people along. I am a union leader. I am accustomed to being across corporate America and cutting deals. I like the art of the deal, not in the form of Donald Trump. I like the art of the deal when it benefits and is able to find solutions for working class families. So I am ready. I am ready to step into this role and give hope to urban voters, Black, Latino, Muslim Americans, immigrant voters who actually want a fighter to go fight for better wages, better jobs, the right to join a union, and for real and comprehensive immigration reform that doesn't put American workers to compete against immigrants, but that can see that immigrants are added value to the American economy. I am the American dream. I was able to come to this country at the age of 14 years old, learn a new language, get a scholarship to attend Cornell University, took on some loans that I spent my entire adult life paying for. So my policies are based on my own experience and the fact that I've been advocating for working people, for Black people, Black workers, women women in the care economy for 30 years. And I am ready to take that experience to the United States Senate and work across the aisle to find real solutions to America's economic problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Medina. Before we get into specific questions from our reporters, I know we have a couple there. There is a Black man, Larry Ham, and an Asian American man, Andy Kim, who are also running. Could you tell us why? And I'm sure this is something that everybody wants to know. Could you tell us why it is significant to have a Latina voice in the Senate?
Yes, let me preface that question by saying that it's actually a historic moment that in New Jersey politics, we have 3 people of color at the top of the senatorial ticket. So I think that we all should note that. that is significant. And how we all entered this race was actually challenge the Democratic notion, the Democratic Party decision that another person, another woman who, with access and to political insiders was going to be the next United States Senator. I think that when we all entered that race, we were all against the notion that the Democratic Party can just choose and force a choice on us. But I will say that Larry Hamm and myself have been fighting the line, the political party making choices through insiders for a long time. Larry Hamm longer than me. But for the 10 years that I have been president of Latina Civic, I have been making the case that the line worked against women of color and it worked against Latinas. You told us the numbers. We are 21% of the population, 10%, 10.5% are Latinas. We have less than 7% representation for Latinas at the legislative level, 5% at the local level. And fundamentally, I always have made this argument. It's not a new argument. You can find it in, I have an extensive social media following, so you can find my statements from the last 10 years that fundamentally the line was a gatekeeper for men, white men, making choices as to when and how they will give opportunity to women of color, Black and Latinas, and I have fought and stood against it. And I was part of the original lawsuit that the Working Families filed against the line because I was a board member of the New Jersey Working Families Party. So we have been making this case for a long time. So I am excited actually that we have 3 people of color at the top of the ticket. When we are replacing the highest ranking senator, Latino senator in New Jersey. I mean, that is significant to the Latino community that we were able to have Senator Menendez. And when the party disregarded what he meant to the Latino community, there had to be a response. And the response was that it was time for a Latina to step up and run for office. And that's what I'm doing. I am running for office because representation matters. Our Latino girls, the daughter of a nurse and the daughter of a janitor needs to see that you do not need to be a billionaire to run for office. Andy Kim has his reasons for running. He's a career politician. He was able to tap on his network of longtime donors to get him to this point, and he has his case to make to New Jersey. I am making my own case to New Jersey. I have been fighting for New Jersey working families for a long time, and now is the time to elect a woman to the United States Senate to fight for women and to fight for working class women and access to healthcare for all women and for support for childcare and for home care, which is fundamentally what we need as women, as we call it, of the sandwich generation that we're in. We are caring for our children and we're caring for our grandparents, and we need help at both ends. So that's what I bring to this discussion.
Thank you. Let's open it to our first question here. This is from Alexandra Slavish. She works for Polish daily publication in New Jersey. Ola, can you ask your question?
Yes. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, Dr. Campos-Medina, for meeting with ethnic press. Being a woman myself, I'm very excited to see a woman running for this important office in New Jersey. And my question is coming from our group, from the ethnic media. We represent a sizable population in New Jersey. However, we're just like all the immigrants, we're very often overlooked in the panorama of the state. And I was wondering, can we count on your help in having our voices heard in New Jersey, especially when it comes to the division of ad dollars from state agencies? This is something that the Center for Cooperative Media has been fighting for and advocating for equitable division of these ads, which usually are transferred to mainstream media, and we are overlooked, even though we do represent, a big part of New Jersey population.
Absolutely. I think that we do a disservice to our democracy and a disservice to our population when we do not invest the resources of the state into communicating with all the mediums that our community consumes. And that is the ethnic media that is localized with the small newspapers, the small websites. I think that we need to do a better job, and I will be, you can count on me of being a voice to also make sure that we have enough procurement, that we actually enact equity outcomes on our procurement process. Because I think that there is this intention, there was a law that was passed about translating all documents to different languages. I remember I'm a commuter to New York City, and I remember I was sitting in a train to New York City, and there was this pamphlet in multiple languages, and the Spanish version was horrendous. With misspellings and words that were wrong. And I actually immediately, took a picture and tweeted it to New Jersey Transit, and I said, who are you paying to translate this document? Now, I was able to see Spanish. I don't remember, other languages. And I took it upon myself to actually reach out to the board members of New Jersey Transit and ask them, who they gave this contract to translate. And not to my surprise, because I knew this was going to happen, they had actually given a huge contract to a huge company who basically had an inter-translating all their documents. Mm-hmm. While they could have done better procurement, better outcome, equity outcomes, and actually give a smaller contract to a smaller contractors from those ethnic medias and those ethnic companies. But this is where people like me, people like us that look like us need to be part of the procurement process, and you can count on me to be a voice. I was just a commuter to New York City who felt offended that the Spanish that I used was not good enough. Imagine how everybody else felt. But that translates also into political campaigns. I don't have, there is a fundraising gender gap in fundraising. Men get more money for every $10 a man gets of donations, a woman gets $1. And you can check this out on the Center for American Women in Politics. So it's not something that I'm making up. So there's a lot of money that goes into political campaigns that do not get spent on newspapers like you and the small ethnic media. And I think as candidates, we need to do a better job as making sure that our community that you are representing and informing also knows about the positions of all the candidates. So this is why, to me, this briefing is so important, because the Montclair University and the Center for Cooperative Media has a role to play in giving you access to the candidate. But the candidate who have the resources to spend money should also invest in educating the public.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let's go to Atlantic City, Dr. Campos-Medina. Let's get this question from Raymond Tyler, who hosts a radio program in Atlantic City. Raymond, please ask your question.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about your campaign. I hope we can book you for an interview on
Definitely.
our show. My question is, I know we do indeed need childcare investments in the state of New Jersey, but one of the biggest complaints I hear from listeners are that the taxes are already sky high. Do you have a plan to invest in childcare significantly that's not going to further cripple residents with taxes?
Yes, and I think the high levels of taxes, and it comes to the affordability issue of how do we make it more affordable to live in New Jersey. To me, that's also a question of how do we invest in an economy that works for all. So there's two things that we can do. One is that as a congressional delegation, we need to fight to get more resources back from the federal government, from the taxes that we already pay to the federal government. We are what we call a sending state. We only get back about 79 cents for every dollar we pay in taxes to the federal government. We were able to move the needle up to about 85 cents during the pandemic. That's when the government sent a lot more money to support some of the essential services during the pandemic. While we do not yet get enough support from the federal government to cover some of the programs that we need to cover here in New Jersey, including investment in our public education, in investment in preschool and childcare. So I think that that's one way to reduce the tax, cost of living in New Jersey, which is already high. The other thing that we need to do, though, is that as President Biden enacted in the last investment in the infrastructure bill that created green energy jobs and infrastructure jobs, in the bill Inflation Reduction Act, he actually created a lot of investments in job creation for the states, and New Jersey did get a good chunk of money from the Investment Reduction Act, but we need to go back and refund it and actually expand the support from the federal government for childcare. There are more funds that we could use so that we can make childcare more affordable. Part of that is also increasing the wages of workers who are in childcare, because those jobs are still low-wage jobs without high enough wages and not enough benefits. So that's where the federal government can play a role in creating jobs that are living wage jobs for those workers and are also funded through federal dollars so that we can reduce the cost to the state.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is coming from Moshin Zahir. I think he wants to ask about specifically on immigration, but in the state focus, with a state focus rather than the national front.
Okay.
Moshin, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much for being with us. Do you know, Congress is very much divided on immigration reforms, and there is a kind of a gridlock situation for the last more than 3 decades. There is no development when it comes to immigration reforms. So do you have any plan to play any role to make this happen?
This is where when the opening line, we talked about how in the United States Senate, we only have 6 senators, and losing Senator Menendez at this point, when he was a key driver of our immigration policy, is a big loss for this debate nationally. On the last round of negotiations of an immigration solution, there were no Hispanic on the negotiating committee for that proposal. Thank God that proposal was killed. Because it was going to do more damage than it was going to fix our immigration problems. So this is where having a strong voice coming from New Jersey is important. Immigration reform needs someone who can bring people along and drive solutions, both by bringing the needs of corporate America for high-tech, more skilled workers to come into the United States, and then the debate, the expectation from the labor movement and American workers to create a path to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented workers. So I think that this is where someone with the experience of this issue like me, I've been managing big discussions and large campaigns and large projects around how do we move forward a real immigration reform solution for America. The border crisis is has to do with a refugee policy, and how during the Donald Trump administration, we actually defunded resettlement programs for refugees, and we failed to update the political asylum laws. So we have to tackle immigration reform on 3 legs. It's like a 3-legged stool. We have to figure out how to adjudicate refugee cases in a faster manner. It can take between 6 to 2 years before a refugee case gets adjudicated. And in the meantime, those families need to be provided for because they do not get a permit to work. Remember that is a problem for these families because they would rather go to work than wait with public support. So we need to invest more money in administrative judges so that they can process proactively immigration, refugee, asylum cases. And if there's families that need to wait a little longer, we need to provide them a right to work so that they can provide for themselves. And then we need to fund resettlement programs so that the federal government has the ability to support municipalities or states who are receiving refugees. Now, not everyone who applies for political asylum at the border qualifies. And this is why we see the crisis at the border, people are applying who will never qualify. We actually, in order to solve that situation, we actually need a proactive foreign policy engagement with Mexico, Latin America, and the Caribbean to actually engage in discussions and in a plan with the region about how we're going to manage the flow of migrants north. And that requires an active foreign policy engagement that includes trade policy, economic policy, democracy, support policies, and security policies. And it has to be at the same time so that we can actually engage with the governments of Mexico, the governments of Central America and Latin America to collaborative figure out how to slow the flow of refugee applications coming to the north. If we don't do that, we're always going to have the pressure at the border that will not be solved by building the Trump wall. The Trump wall is a political distraction and a racist troll by Trump to turn American workers against immigrants. And that's what I always say, unless we have a proactive way to engage with Latin America to reduce the flow, we're never going to be able to solve the crisis at the border.
Thank you, Ruth.
From immigration, let's focus again on the statewide issue, and let's allow Clyde Hughes to ask his question. Clyde, all right, here you go. Please unmute yourself, Clyde.
Okay. I have two quick questions. Doctor, I don't know if you remember me. We met in Pleasantville.
Yes, I remember you.
Irvin Moreno's run for city council. Nice to meet you again. Two quick questions. You talked a lot about the line. And you are absolutely spot on that the line almost discourages people of color or any new person trying to break into the system, and it's simply there just to benefit incumbents. The problem with the line is that a lot of the people who have the power to get rid of it are in office and they have benefited from it, along with Andy Kim.
Yes.
How dedicated are you and others, regardless of how the election turns out, to continue this fight against the line? Because it's tough to get rid of the line in the middle of an election, but the time to get rid of it is when you're not in the heat of an election. And should I ask my second question now, or should I wait until you answer that one?
No, it's a connection.
Well, let's just wait until you after Dr. Campos-Medina answer that question.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I am as committed as I can be when I decided to enter this race when there still was a line and try to challenge and challenge the line, because many people told me there's no way a Latina, a woman of color can enter a race for the United States Senate with a party support, and they already made up their mind. But like many other women that we had supported running against the line, the statement had, I don't say because I didn't do it to make a statement, it had to be done. It had to be challenged. So my reason for entering the race is that we needed to show other women of color, Black women, Latino women, and immigrant women, that we all need to challenge the line. And every time we challenge the line, we show is power, is discriminatory power against women and women of color and candidates of color. I said, so, I mean, that's why we at Latina Civic ran women off the line every time, because we needed to show that it was systemically holding back women of color. So I am running, I'm still here, and I will go as far as I can go. I'm on the ballot, so I am in this race. And I am calling on other women to always challenge the line and always put themselves out there, because our people, working people, Black people, Latino people, Muslim Americans, immigrant people need to see us running so that they can actually get excited about elections, because we're talking about the issues that they care about. So I'm committed to putting myself on the ballot to continue that fight, and I will continue to do that fight after we're done with this primary. So this is what I said. I will continue to say that not fixing the ballot in a permanent way is detrimental. It is discriminatory to voters of color and to candidates of color, and we will continue that fight beyond this primary election. We have a victory that we have a block ballot, and that we hope that that becomes the norm moving forward.
Okay, my second question, you have not been shy about criticizing Bob Menendez, and in fact, you've been one of the most vocal people who have said that he should resign right now. And my question is, has it given you any pause at all to criticize a fellow Latino in the way you have? And do you think, or are you hoping that you're able to do that and not create a stereotype against not only other Latinos, but Latinos running for office in the future?
Let me preface answering the question by saying that when I entered this race, after the indictments were announced of Senator Menendez in the last round, and I did it after consultation with statewide Latino leaders who felt like we all felt. We felt shocked and we felt disappointed on Senator Menendez getting himself into this, the third time into this position. We had defended him twice already. And we were the biggest supporters of Senator Menendez because we were proud of his trajectory of coming from the kid of immigrant family. He's not an immigrant, he said, but of growing up in a tenement in Union City. We were proud of him and we supported him all along. So we were all disappointed and shocked that he was again in the position that he was. And when I entered the race, and I entered the race because I felt it was time for his leadership to move on, that we needed to go back to show to a leadership that is ethical, a leadership that is uncompromising in his values about what we are called to serve in public service, which is to find solutions to people's problems. I always respected the legacy of Senator Menendez in so many key issues for New Jersey and the leadership that he represented for our community. So I never took it for granted that stepping into this role was also challenging his leadership for so many years. But frankly, his lack of a moral compass and how he behaved in this last time is not the example of ethical leadership that I want to give my two sons. And as a woman, I felt that it is time to create a new bench of political leadership for Latinos in New Jersey and for leaders of color. So that's what I stepped into this space, and to remind the political system in New Jersey that there are leaders that are ready to step up and have a moral compass on the leadership values to take our political leadership to the next level. And that Latina Civic has trained over 1,000 Latinas in the last 10 years of our existence. that are ready to step up and build the next bench of political leadership for New Jersey now and moving forward.
Great.
We have about 5 questions in the pipeline. So I'm going to ask Juliana Delgado to ask her question. This is a very important issue on housing.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Campos-Medina. Thanks for being here with us. My question is about affordable housing here in Jersey. It's a really important issue for many of our New Jersey residents and our workers, you know, up there with jobs, childcare, home care, reproductive rights, everything that you did mention. But what kind of plan do you think you'll support to bring more affordable housing here to the state?
Yes, the way I talk about affordability, which includes creating more units of affordable housing, comes into what I call creating and investing in an economy that works for everyone. And you can see it on my platform, on my website. Affordable housing is a combination of investments from the federal government and investments from the state and coordination with our municipalities. We have a shortages of affordable housing in every county in the state, so it's not a crisis of the urban areas only. We have affordability issues across the state. As a United States Senator, the number one thing that we can do, and I said it in the context of reducing the cost of childcare, right, before, is that we need to fight for more dollars back into New Jersey from the federal government, increase our return on investments from 79 to perhaps the dollar. And part of that, how we increase the return on federal support to New Jersey, is that we must invest more in HUD, in the housing and urban development, so that we can increase the vouchers, the number of vouchers. That we have not increased funding of the voucher system for Section 8 housing, so we need to immediately do that. We also need to immediately invest in HUD so that they can support more mixed income housing development, which can be incentivized through HUD and municipalities, and do what's called community benefit agreements with developers, in which they are getting any type of support, either to tax incentives or pilots, that they can actually commit to a certain number of affordable unit housing and to do mixed income housing developments, rather than just focus on high level luxury development that has prevailed in the last few years. We also need to create more incentives for the state and municipalities to create more rent control units that are rent control, so that we don't just focus on creating new units, but also protecting the affordable units that already exist in the housing market right now. And I think that that's a policy that needs to be incentivized at the municipal level, and then create some political leverage with developers or owners of buildings, so that they don't continue to just raise the rent for current occupants. We also need to incentivize supporting the creation of entry-level family home units. You know, we focus a lot on mixed income housing and rental units, but we need to figure out how to expand the number of home units that are single family owned, that a young family can actually have access to, through expanding the number of homes that are affordable, but also reducing high predatory mortgages that are focused on young families and families of color, and also create relief for Black women who are suffering the highest level of predatory loans on their home mortgages, and try to figure out how to give them some support so they can actually stay on their homes and don't just be taken over by developers who buy them and convert them in luxury home units in our communities. Yeah.
Thank you. We have 3 reporters who have raised their hand earlier on. So let's give this opportunity. Mark Tyler, please ask your question.
Dr. Campos-Medina, thank you for coming on and joining us. I'll be brief because I know that there are other reporters who are also waiting. What will be your plan to spur more business between the state and minority communities, be it Latino, African American, or others, if you're elected?
One of the second statement that I issue as a candidate for the United States Senate was my statement on the access to contracts with minority contractors of the state of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey issued a study that was 9 years in the making, and it revealed the low level of contracting that goes to Black and Latino entrepreneurs. And I think that that is something that we have known for a long time, that the bundling of contract to high contractors excludes minority and women-owned entrepreneurs. So I call for Governor Murphy. He actually has the executive power to issue equity outcome mandates on state contracting. And he has the power to do it, and I don't think he hasn't done it. So I think that because that is something the administration can do. They can actually say for every dollar of contracting that goes out from the federal government, we expect 30% that goes to minorities, and develop a process that opens up opportunities for Black and Latino and women-owned businesses. So it can be done. I think that the governor has to do a better job in developing the process, and advocates like yourself and the Chamber of Commerce, the African American Chamber of Commerce, the statewide Hispanic Chamber of Commerce have been very critical of the lack of proactivity from the governor's office in addressing this issue. So I already called that for that executive order, and it can be done. As a federal official, though, I think that we need to do a better job of putting policies in place at the Small Business Administration to incentivize support of small business owners, because the small business creation in our communities, entrepreneurial activities are essential for wealth creation in our community. I support good jobs for people, but I also support equal investments in innovation and access to capital for Black and Latino and women-owned businesses. And I think we need to, we can demand it as a matter of policy each time we fund development, the Small Business Administration. And also every time we earmark dollars to go to New Jersey Development, the NJDA Development Organization. I know that they've done some grants to small businesses, but I always said if those grants are too small, you need to actually commit a certain amount of the budget to be directed towards a number, the population that is commensurate with the population that our small business entrepreneurs are serving. And I always tell people, and I learned this from my husband is an entrepreneur, that the minority entrepreneurs, we are wealth managers, we are bankers, we are engineering companies, we are software companies. We're not just mom and pop restaurants or mom and pop stores. We actually want to have access to the big capital, not just to small grants.
You know, the yellow hands are all over the screen, Dr. Campos-Medina. So let's give Clive Marcano to ask his question.
And then Abu Taher has been waiting, so we should go to him next.
Hello.
Go ahead, Clive.
Hi, Patricia. How are you?
Hola, Clive.
Hola. In the beginning, you're talking about if you become a Senate, you want to try to reform the court to put more judges. This is your plan. You want to put more judges in the Supreme Court. This is what you're talking when you say
Yes.
reform the court. Also, another question is Senator Menendez is going to run as an independent candidate, and if you become the formal Democratic candidate, how it's going to affect your candidate?
Well, the speculation that Senator Menendez will run as an independent candidate, I think is I don't see any possibility of that option because New Jersey is a majority Democratic state. We have more Democrats than Republicans registered to vote, and independent races are often not viable. So he's not raising money. He raised $1,000 in the last cycle. So I think that what he's doing is staying as a United States Senator as long as he can so that he can negotiate and be able to present his case to the courts. So I will say it like that. I feel like I am the Democratic candidate running in the Democratic primary, and I'm gonna do it, giving my best to communicate my message to all New Jerseyans, to all progressive voters, and to Latinos who wanna see a new type of leader being on the ballot. So I am not thinking about, I'm thinking about the primary, and my goal is to win on June 4th. And then, you know, after that, I continue to be a Democrat and support who the Democrat will be on the ballot. So I don't think he's running as an independent, so.
That's so positive. So let's go to Abu Taher. Abu, you didn't post your question, but please ask your question here.
Did you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. So my question is, as you know, the Democratic Party have a lot of people, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people there against of the war, especially Gaza war. And then they are accusing Israel. They're genociding the women and children. And also they are involved, US policy, I mean, Democratic Party or US policy has been criticized by hundreds of thousands of Americans who don't support war or killing people. What is your position, especially on Gaza issues?
One of my first statements when I announced that I was a candidate for the United States Senate was to call for a permanent and immediate ceasefire in Gaza. And I did it not for political convenience, but for a matter of who I am as a candidate and who I am as a leader. I am a child of war. I survived a civil war in El Salvador. My parents had to leave El Salvador when I was 6 years old, and I did not reunite with them until I was 14 years old due to our broken immigration system. I survived a brutal civil war in El Salvador. I know the consequences of war. It destroys communities, it destroys families, it kills people. And the United States had a role to play in the Central American wars that we never recovered from it. So based on my own experience of the suffering the impact of war, I had been from the beginning a candidate for peace. I believe as an American citizen and as an American that I am today, that as the superpower, the military superpower of the world, the United States should be in the role of strengthening democracies and protecting civilians and children in time of war. And that's not what we're doing in Israel, in the war, Israel against the Palestinians right now. I also said that Hamas attack on the state of Israel on October was a crime against humanity, and Hamas is a terrorist organization. But in eradicating Hamas as a terrorist organization, Israel cannot act without accountability in respecting international law to respect the civilian population of Gaza. So that is why I also joined Senator Sanders when he called for stopping the funding of Israel if they will not comply with international human rights law. So I always been a huge advocate of protecting civilians and holding Israel accountable for the genocide and the humanitarian crisis that is causing it for the people of Palestine right now. And I will continue to speak out against that as this campaign moves forward and as a citizen, moving forward.
Thank you. We have less than 10 minutes, so we have to give the opportunity to these two reporters, or three now. So let's go with Latino Spirit with Diego Maya. Are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, go for it.
Hello, Dr. Campos-Medina. Thank you for being with us. I'd like to, I have two things. Could you talk a little bit about, prior to running for the Senate, for being a candidate in the Democratic Party, you helped a lot of Latino families, and in fact, you helped some families in Trenton, and you just went out of your, out of the way to come all the way down to Trenton to help parents fight for their children so they wouldn't have to walk a couple of miles to their schools. Can you elaborate on what you did on that time? And also on Menendez, a lot of South American countries, Central American countries, always their media always asked Menendez on his point of view on the governments of that region of the world. And currently there's a one side, which is the Venezuelan government, the Colombian government, the Nicaraguan government. So what is your stand on that type of government like Venezuela and the government that is emerging currently in Colombia with Petro? We just had hundreds of thousands of people coming out to walk in protesting Petro's government. So what is your stance on those types of governments?
Okay, let me start with the local and then we go to the foreign policy position. So locally, Diego, what you're referring to, I am at heart a community organizer, an organizer. And I've been in politics for a long time as political director of labor unions. I've been doing representing workers in every county, I would say, in this state and nationally. So when I remember I was doing a speaking at a parents meeting in Trenton, they invited me to their the parents wanted to, the teachers thought that they should hear my story as an English as a second language, and I ended up going to a parents plenary at the high school in Trenton. And at that point, there was this proposal to build a new high school in Trenton, and the school board had already voted to separate English as a second language learners from the general population. And I remember the parents wanted support to fight that because they felt that, and I felt from my own experience, that the fastest way for immigrants to adapt and integrate is to actually be part of the general population. You have to have specific services, but you also have to integrate and create, because part of learning a language is adapting to the culture. So I immediately became an organizer for those parents and brought in the NEA, the AFT, and we actually created a campaign to engage parents in advocating for their children and to actually force the school board to change their decision to separate second English learners from the general population. And we actually brought even national civil rights groups to take a look at the potential of filing a civil rights lawsuit against the school board in Trenton. And I think that the combination of the grassroots organizing, the union engagement, and the national civil rights groups taking a look at this actually stop the plans of the school board to segregate the school system. And that's an example of how I approach leadership and how I approach bringing solutions. I bring people together, and I bring different interests together to find a common ground and decide how to move forward. So I'm very proud of what we were able to do in Trenton in engaging the parents directly because they were concerned. So thank you for bringing that to their attention. In terms of foreign policy, I think that, and this is something that I will, I differentiate myself very clearly from Senator Menendez, but also from Andy Kim. Andy Kim has been a senator, a congressman for 6 years, and he likes to talk about his expertise in foreign policy and how he served of the Obama administration in Iraq and in Afghanistan during that region. What I always say is that someone who claims to do foreign policy in areas that have been plagued with war is not focused on how do we create peace and we build democracy. Specifically in Latin America, we do not have a proactive foreign policy approach to Latin America. We rightly so, I'm not saying Europe and the Middle East is not of national security importance, but I would also argue that Mexico and Central America and Latin America are of crucial national security importance because they are our neighbors. And the more they fall into, and if their democracies fall into shambles, which is what's happening in many of those countries, then we will bear the consequences by seeing increased migration. Haiti is another example. Haiti, we have not paid enough attention to the collapse of democratic institutions in Haiti. And that's why we see the ongoing security concerns and the gangs ruling Haiti and the continued pushing of migrants coming to the border. So I asked your senator, I want to be in the Foreign Affairs Committee because I want to have a proactive approach of foreign policy towards Latin America and engage in ongoing discussions with those governments about strengthening democratic processes, investing in democratic institutions, addressing the security concerns of civil society, and addressing the gangs, and addressing the drug war, and then creating an economic investment strategy through trade, which really we haven't had a cohesive economic investment strategy and trade strategy for Latin America. And that's what I would like to focus on as your next senator.
Dr. Campos-Medina, we are running out of time, but we have 2 more questions and we really want to cover these questions. So Carlos, why don't you ask your question now and then followed by Oran Accord. We may be extending a little bit if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay. Carlos, go ahead, please.
Just go ahead and unmute, and then we'll let you ask your question there.
So could we?
All right, Orhan, why don't you go while Carlos figures out the unmute?
Yeah, sure. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, Mike, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. It was informative session. So my question is, why do you think New Jersey needs a new leader in the US Senate? So what's make you different between Democrats? So the Democrats, as far as my concern, Democrats thinks one way, the Republican thinks other way. So what's make you special in Democrats? Why the people they're gonna vote for you? So what is the main differences?
So what makes me different? I am a woman who has been a labor champion for 30 years. I have been advocating for economic opportunity for American workers and for the rights of all immigrant workers in the United States. I have spent time advocating for an increase in the minimum wage, for paid family leave, for paid sick leave, for affordable health care, for protections for women in the workplace to work free of sexual harassment and gender violence. I have been at the forefront of defining policies to protect the rights of workers in the gig economy, whether they be food delivery workers, delivering your food after you order it on your phone, or app developers that work for Google, that they serve long-term careers and they serve an opportunity to build their American dream. So I've been doing the policy work and the political work to get candidates elected, and then to create coalitions of business groups, unions, and advocates to get legislation approved. I am also a union leader. I believe in compromise. I believe in finding solutions to problems, and that sometimes means that I will not get everything I want, but I will move the needle forward, and that's the art of making policy. You do not solve everything at once, but you find ways to compromise. And as a legislative leader, a political leader for SEIU for a long time, we always were able to have conversations and create policy alliances with Republicans. And I do the work. I do the work of building alliances. So that's what I am committed to do, to addressing the actual concerns of working people. Now, there's a group of Republicans who are not interested in making policy. They're interested in disruption. And that's what I put Donald Trump and some of the MAGA Republicans. But there are Republicans who actually have real concerns about the economy. I believe in the type of Republican in New Jersey like Christy Whitman. You actually need to go back to Republicans that wanted to actually make government work, like the Christy Whitmans of the world. So I have a history of being able to work with Republicans who want to make government work. The problem is that Donald Trump doesn't. He wants to become a dictator. So that's what makes me different. I'm actually someone who comes from a working class family. My policy solutions, I didn't read them on a book. They weren't learned on a poll. They were learned from the 30 years of experience that I have had working with workers in Newark, in Atlantic City, in Plainfield, and in our urban cities.
Thank you so much for that. Let's give Carlos the last opportunity to ask his question. He's been waiting patiently. So Carlos, take it away.
Great, thank you, Ani. Saludos, doctora Campos-Medina. Soy Carlos Ávila del periódico Novia News. We always talk about the Latinos in New Jersey represent an important and growing cultural and economy segment. I would like to know how you're feeling if the Democratic Party or different organizations in the Latino community are supporting good enough to win the seat. And the other question, please, if you become the senator, what could be the priorities for benefits young children in New Jersey? You know, our families are full of young children. So I would like to know, if you become a senator, what you could do for them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. So Latinos, we are about, we're 21% of the population. We're about, I think, 80% of the voters, the registered voters. And Latino vote is not a monolithic vote. We're never being monolithic. Prior to Donald Trump, the Latino vote it would go back between being Republican and being Democrat. It was like 50-51. And I always felt that we actually were able to get more attention from both parties when it was a vote that they both needed to court. The problem that we have now is that because of Donald Trump, the Latino vote has become more Democratic, and the Republican Party has basically ceded fighting for the Latino vote to Donald Trump. What also has happened is that Democrats, because we have become more Democrat, are failing to talk to Latino voters or invest in the Latino voter outreach or work with our local organizations and our local leaders to help them build the resources to talk and engage Latino voters. So part of my run for the United States Senate is to actually create the energy within the Latino community to actually want to engage in our politics and give them a reason to vote. I had always said that Latinos and Blacks and urban voters need candidates who look like them to vote for those candidates. But you also need resources to communicate with them. And I think that the Democratic Party has put too much resources on attracting back suburban voters who voted for Trump, to bring them back into the Democratic Party, than investing in the Latino and Black vote in the urban centers. But that's also our responsibility as community leaders to bring those resources to our community. Lastly, I think that in order to support poor working families, most of our politics, we always talk about middle-class families and working families, but we also have a large population of New Jerseyans who are poor and need support through the child tax credit, that we need to make sure that it continues, it gets expanded. Many families do need the child tax credit to return and to be bigger to support them by giving them immediate support every year. So I will fight for the child tax credit to be increased in return.
With that, we would like to thank you, Dr. Campos-Medina, for your time. We really appreciate you for giving us the opportunity to have this very important conversation with you and the reporters that we serve. So thank you very much, and I will give this back to Joe, who will do an announcement about after the president and some of the recording.
Yeah. Thank you, Oni. Thank you again, Dr. Campos-Medina. That was great. And thank you to everyone who attended and asked questions. As Cassandra said at the beginning, this has been recorded. We're going to send out the transcript, an auto-generated transcript, as well as the recording for you all to use in your reporting. Please send us any links to anything you publish so that we can read, share, and help promote it. And again, thank you so much. If you'd like to attend our subsequent second and third part of this series with Larry Ham and Representative Andy Kim, that will be happening on Thursday of this week and I believe Thursday of next week. The link to all of these are on the Center for Cooperative Media's website at centerforcooperativemedia.org. Thank you again, Dr. Campos-Medina and her staff, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. And anybody wants to follow up with an interview or question, you can contact my press team, press@patricia